In my years of slaying monsters and teabagging Kazu, I've always had a shell of armor to protect my fleshy man body. Not that I have a different type of body, but I wanted to ask the question, what is the most broken, OP armor set in the history of Monster Hunter? We all have our sneaking suspicions, but we're going to take a journey through some of the best full armor sets in the franchise and of course pick out the best one. I'm not going to talk about mix sets because that would just complicate things to a whole nother league that I just can't handle on my own. But I will be sure to include their mix set capabilities. Let me know what your favorite armor set in Monster Hunter is and what you think is the most broken out of the entire series. I'm expecting a lot of the same answers. But let's begin with 3 Ultimate. Let's start off simple. Now, when I first played 3 Ultimate, I was in middle school. I was but a pubescent, crackhead boy, so I never incorporated skills or mix sets too much. I basically chose the armor set that looked the coolest, and coincidentally, that was Goldbeard Cedius, which actually is a pretty good armor set for the beginning of G rank. Not necessarily broken, but a similar skill that it does share with our first potential armor set is Hollow Gen Moran. That skill, by the way, is called Handicraft, which raises the sharpness of your weapons. Now, obviously, in many ways, this is a huge benefit, but there's an underlying advantage that many people, including myself, did not know. I mean, I figured this out only in the last couple of years. So, not only does Handicraft raise your sharpness, but your max attack value. Check out this chart here. Now, this is from Monster Hunter World, so I'm not sure if it directly correlates to 3 Ultimate, but I assume it works in a similar way. Blue sharpness to white sharpness is an instant 10% increase in raw attack value, which doesn't seem like much, but it kinda is. Think of it like this. For every 10 attacks that you do, an additional attack is performed. After 15 or more minutes of attacking the same thing over and over again, those numbers add up. You could attack 100 times, but the damage you output was 110. My point is that Handicraft good, and keep this in mind. Hollow Gen armor has not only Handicraft, but Razor Sharp, which retains your sharpness for a longer time. There's also health, which isn't bad, an extra 50 points so that the next attack can kill you. But let's not forget that in the older games, there were also negative skills like Short Sprinter, which Hollow Gen had. Now, you can easily gem in a decoration to remove this, but the problem with that is that decoration slots were so little and far in between. They were precious for builds, so even just using one slot to cover up a bad skill could block you from getting an entirely different skill. Sometimes you had to do more to cover up even the more terrible downgrades like Expert -2, which was unfortunately on one of the best armor sets in the entire game, Abyssal Aegeocris. Now, Nether Armor has this awful negative skill, so why am I talking about it? Because remember, I'm also looking at the potential for mix sets. Now, mix sets back in the day were a big deal, for 3 reasons. One of them is that they were always better than full armor sets, just without question. And also it was incredibly difficult, at least for me, to find different armor sets that fit together to create enough firepower for hunts. But when you did, they were very good. Skills worked very differently back then, and that's another video entirely. But number 3, you didn't have to worry about negative skills, like, at all. What made Nether Armor meta-defining for mix sets is that it offered a skill that no other armor set in the entire game had. Remember Handicraft and how I praised it for like however many minutes? Well, there's a skill called Hone Blade that not only gives you Handicraft, but attack up large. 2 skills into one was something unheard of back then. It was legend, a myth. And now we have it on every single armor set in Monster Hunter World. With Abyssal Aegeocris being the only armor set to have this incredible skill, it shoots up in the ranks for having exclusive capabilities. The mix set potential was pretty bonkers, because if you had a good Hone Blade charm, you would make a couple of pieces of Nether Armor and have the rest to do whatever you want. Unfortunately, the highest charm with Hone Blade was +3. You could never have +4 or above, so you can never only use 2 pieces of Nether Armor. I mean, that being said, I don't know if Abyssal Aegeocris armor is the best, simply because by itself, it's alright. The only skill that actually matters is Hone Blade. The other one's like, I don't know, Current, Swifter, Man. And then it had Expert -2. It wasn't really broken. But I think with all I have to consider, I'm gonna have to go with Hollow Gen, because even though Abyssal had Hone Blade, Gen has Handicraft, Razor Sharp, and Health, which are all good skills. And the only good skill that Nether had was Hone Blade. Not to mention that Hollow Gen has some pretty good mix set options as well. So yeah, Hollow Gen wins 3 Ultimate. Is it broken? No, not at all. Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate introduced a new mechanic called mounting, where you could basically stab an innocent creature's back and topple the monster for a complete beatdown. It was fun, and now because this was a new mechanic, everyone completely abused it. Maliciously. You want to talk about broken mechanics, mounting was so easy to perform back then, and you could do it multiple times during a hunt, as in 3 times at the least. And it was all the more powerful with an armor set like Star Knight. Star Knight was an armor set introduced in some free DLC where you had to fight, I believe it was Zenogre and Seregios in the arena. Not exactly my favorite quest, but it was totally worth it. The skills that come with Star Knight are Challenger +2, which raises your attack and affinity when the monster becomes enraged, Edgelore, which was another dual skill that prevented your attacks from deflecting and halved the rate at which your sharpness decreased, which is pretty good, but the most broken skill in my humble opinion was Rodeo God. This skill made mounting even easier. So much easier that one good mounting attack was enough to get your first ride. Not to mention that toppling the monster was easier too. It was completely broken. Every single pub when that DLC quest came out, at least one guy had Star Knight armor. And let's not forget that they always had an Insect Glaive. I mean, as a matter of fact, now that I think about it, 4 Ultimate is just a broken game. Insect Glaive was broken, freaking Charge Blade was overpowered, and of course, Star Knight Mail as well. Not many armor sets have this skill too, by the way, Rodeo God, and those that did weren't good. It was like Leather Z or whatever. I mean, they just weren't good armor sets. Star Knight was the only good armor set that had Rodeo God. Not to mention that it also had 4 points in freaking handicraft, so you could easily fill in the rest for some extra sharpness. And it had great slots and mix set potential. Like, this armor set was completely busted. Of course, there was also Chameleos armor. That one was really good back in the day too. I mean, if you used a status weapon, you had to use Chameleos armor, like, just without question. In the first 30 seconds, you could easily paralyze a monster. I mean, I did. It was fun. There was also White Fatalis with Critical God and Hone Blade as well, but honestly, I feel like Star Knight is just better in so many different ways. The mix-up potential, Rodeo God, and how broken the mounting mechanic was. It was an infamous armor set in 4 Ultimate, and it definitely was the most overpowered in the entire game. Alright, Generations Ultimate is next. I never finished this game, so my choice for it may be a bit off. You guys can let me know. Obviously, Deviants have some pretty busted armor sets. There's Grimclaw, I use that all the time, and then there was also Dread King, Thunderlord, maybe. I don't really remember all of them, but most of them had a specific set of skills that pertain to a certain playstyle or weapon class. Drill Tusk, for example, was very good for Gunlance users, but it wasn't necessarily overpowered in those regards. Keep in mind, by the way, that Deviant armor also had 0 slots. Like, you couldn't do anything with it. You just came with the skills and you're good to go. So what about an armor set that gives you extra skills and doubles the points on your talismans? Atoka has only 2 skills for its complete armor set, but that's all it really needs. Skill +2 does exactly what it sounds like, and Double Talisman, again, does exactly what it sounds like. This has to be the most versatile set in the game's history. You essentially have a blank slate to work with, and if you have a great charm, it'll be even better. Of course, to have versatility, you need to have good slots on your armor, and holy crap does this armor meet up to expectations. This armor set is not broken in terms of how many skills it can have, but it's broken due to the fact that it's customizable in a sense. Anyone who plays the game can use this armor, and if you like a specific weapon, you can set in decorations for that weapon class. And let's not forget, Atoka weapons were busted, and they had 3 slots too. It's also important to notice that, like, hey, it wasn't as grindy as Deviants. Yes, Deviants had really good armor and weapons, but like, come on, are you really gonna fight 15 of the same Deviant over and over again just to get 1 armor piece? No, you're not. I'm certainly not gonna do that. Just give me Atoka and I'll be good. Monster Hunter World Iceborne. This is the one, folks. I feel like this is where we're gonna have our broken armor set. Because Iceborne, first of all, had a power issue, meaning that the newest monster 9 times out of 10 had the best armor set or weapons in the entire game, throwing everything else out of the door. It's similar to the DLC characters in Smash. Most of them were easily ranked A tier or above because they were newer and had freaking broken mechanics. Screw you, Terry. Fatalis was the final monster added to the game, so therefore his armor set is completely bonkers. It's one of the most broken armor sets in the Monster Hunter franchise, like, without question. Let me just go through the list of skills this armor set has, okay? Weakness Exploit, Evade Window, Handicraft, and Critical Eye. I should mention that some of these skills weren't fully upgraded, but with the unholy amount of slots you had in the armor, it really doesn't matter, like at all. I also want to point out that Weakness Exploit was one of the best skills in this specific game because dealing crit damage was ridiculous. Not to mention you did more affinity to weak spots that were wounded with Weakness Exploit, and you best believe that everyone and their mother abused the Clutch Claw. Monster Hunter World also introduced beta sets, which got rid of the second skill on an armor piece in exchange for more flexibility in slots. If you didn't care for the second skill, just make the beta set and have a level 4 slot added to your list. And for Fatalis, this was very easy to do. Oh yeah, and World also introduced set bonuses, and for Fatalis there were freaking 2 of them. If you had 2 pieces of Fatalis' armor, you gained Inheritance, which removed the limitations on certain skills like Divine Blessing, Latent Power, and Agitator, just to name a few. If you were wearing 4 pieces, you gained True Razor Sharp, or Spare Shot, but it significantly reduced the rate at which you lost sharpness, and combined with Handicraft, you never needed to use a whetstone ever again, and had purple sharpness on almost everything. The 4 set bonus also gave you 100 plus health and stamina, which may not seem like much, but in Iceborne, grabbing Vitality was actually better than most defensive skills. I mean, think of it like this. Would you rather have a 5% increase in your defense, or freaking just 100 plus health? Most of the time, if I had 3 extra level 1 slots, boom, Vitality. It's that easy. So in short, Fatalis armor had incredible skills across the board, great set bonuses, amazing defense, numerous slots, and it looked freaking awesome. I mean, the wings are like really cool. This is not really surprising since he was not only the last monster added, but a black dragon, which are above elder dragons on the scale of like who's the most powerful. Not to mention that there were like, what, 6 black dragons and another 2 of them were white Fatalis and crimson Fatalis? Yeah, Fatalis is pretty strong. However, I think there is one other armor set that can compete with Fatalis in this game. Safijiva. Now hear me out, okay? This Elder Dragon, before Fatalis was introduced, was completely busted, alright? Everyone was using it, especially his weapons, and again, that's another video entirely. But let's take a look at the armor set. First of all, when you need 5 different rare drops, mantles, whatever you want to collectively call them, you know that this armor set is going to be worth it. It was actually the same for Fatalis. But anyways, the skills that Safijiva have are Blight Resistance, Maximum Might, Critical Boost, and Evade Window. While Maximum Might and Blight Resistance aren't bad skills, they just aren't, really worth it, and they aren't helping the broken nature of this armor set. But that's okay, because Maximum Might is the second skill on 3 pieces of the armor set, so just get the beta version, and now you have more room for customizing your set. It was stupid how easy this was. Now what really makes this armor set OP was the set bonus that it gave you. It was one of the only armor sets in the entire game to require all 5 pieces to activate the full power of its set bonus, True Dragon Vein Awakening. Now what this skill does is while your weapon is drawn, you gain 150 elemental damage or 120 status damage. But get this, you also receive 40% affinity. How did they think this was fair? And now granted, you take damage while you attack, but after a certain amount of attacks, you just regain more health than you had lost. Like I mentioned before, critical attacks were meta in Iceborne, so not only did this set give you a free 40% on all your weapons, but you also had critical boost and more than enough slots to grab Weakness Exploit. This means that with a 0% affinity weapon, you could easily have 90% affinity with all conditions met. And they weren't hard to meet, Clutch Claw, boom, Weakness Exploit, there you go. And like Fatalis, this set could be used by anyone. It didn't have specific skills, and if you wanted specific skills, just decoration it up. So here's how I see it. If you were creative, Safijiva's armor set could deal more damage than Fatalis by a good margin. But Fatalis was a bit more defensive with 60 more base defense and more slots for versatility. Fatalis also had more mix set potential too, but if I'm being honest with myself, I'm gonna have to go with Safijiva, and here's why. While Fatalis has incredible skills, it just doesn't compete with Safi's Dragon Vein Awakening. True Razor Sharp is good, and so is Handicraft, all those skills are great, but I think having an extra 150 elemental damage or 120 status, along with 40% affinity, is too good to pass up. Also, you have to consider specific builds that can be made with Safi's full armor set. I mean, let's say I wanted to make an ice type build. Adding ice attack decorations on top of what Dragon Vein will give me absolutely destroys monsters that are weak to ice. Same with dragon, fire, etc. Safi has plenty of level 1 slots to be used for extra elemental attack or vitality if you wanted to. Yeah, Fatalis is more defensive with the extra health and the extra defense, but honestly, Safijiva's builds are just completely overpowered. You might risk some defense for it, but honestly, when it comes to only Fatalis, that might actually matter. Fighting anything else in the game, that 60 base defense or extra health really isn't gonna matter. Although I will say, if you're gonna go for a raw destructive build, yeah, go with Fatalis every single time. But if you're gonna go with an elemental build, yeah, Safi is the way to go. The damage between the two, Safi is going to win every single time, but I think Fatalis is just more common. Not to mention that in the base game before Iceborne, yeah, elemental damage wasn't really that powerful, and then it got a huge buff in Iceborne, and then when you combine that with Safi's Dragon Vein Awakening and Kajar weapons that have critical element attached to the weapon itself, yeah, it can be pretty busted. And with that, I think Safijiva has the most broken armor set in the history of Monster Hunter. You might be wondering, what about Monster Hunter Rise? Well, first of all, I freaking hate that game, and second of all, it's still in high rank, so we really don't know what it's gonna look like in G rank, but I'll be sure to cover that when it comes out. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching today's video. I very much appreciate it. Thank you for stopping by. It means a lot, I haven't made a video in a while. I am sorry. I was working on my finals, which I passed all of them with flying colors. I'm actually certified in Photoshop right now, so it's pretty cool. I also have a Twitch. If you wish to follow me over there, I will leave it in the link down below. I literally play any single game that I feel like playing in the moment. So, there you go. But if you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like and to subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone, and of course, stay safe.